Alright, I want to take some time real quick to talk about some special lines that we're going to see and how those look as equations. So the first one I want to look at is a horizontal line. So every now and then we're going to run across a line that's going to cut across your graph and kind of look like this. First of all, looking for my vertical line test, I can tell that this is going to be a function. But now I want to test, well, what would that equation be? So just like any normal finding an equation from a graph, I'm going to find some points that are on the line. And forgive me, I know my line's a little crooked, but we'll say these points are there. So now I'm going to come over and I'm going to put those on my table. So I have when x is 2, y is 3. I have when x is 5. Y is 3 as well, and then I have when x is 7, y is 3. Notice my y's all repeat, right? So just like before, just like any time I'm working with a table finding an equation, I'm going to start with delta y, delta x to find my coefficient. Now over here I have 0 every time, right? 3 to 3 is a change of 0. 3 to 3 changes 0. Now 2 to 5, that's a 3. 5 to 7, that's a 2. So if I'm looking at these delta y's over delta x's, I have two different ones. I have 0 over 3 and I have 0 over 2. Now both of these, if you plug that into a calculator, 0 divided by 3, I have nothing, and I'm going to split it into 3 groups. Well, everybody is going to get nothing. 0, and I split into 2 groups, everybody gets nothing. This comes out and the calculator will give you 0. So what that tells me is that I have 0x. Now, if I'm in the math sense, like I said before, it's kind of pointless to write those zeros in front of x right in there if I'm writing my equation, but I'm going to leave it in there for now so you can see what the process column is going to look like. So I'm going to zoom in over here so we can kind of do some work. My coefficient is 0, so I have to write that there, but my x value is 2. So I have 0 times 2, well that's going to be 0, but I need it to be 3. So I need to add positive 3. Check it on the second line here, and I have 0 times 5. Well, that's going to again be 0, but I need it to equal 3, so I have a positive 3. And then again, if I check it on the 7, 0 times 7 plus 3 to get to positive 3. So I can tell up here from my process column that my equation would be y equals 0x plus 3. Now here's where I'm talking about in the math world, we don't like to write things that don't need to be written. 0x tells me every time that relationship is going to come out to 0. So what you'll see this equation as most of the time, is instead you'll see it written as y equals 3. So in short, anytime you have that vertical line, if I come back over and take a look at my my graph, I can see that 3 is where it hits the y-axis, and that's our y-axis, and that's where this equation comes from. That's where my equation comes from right there, is y equals 3. So anytime you have a horizontal line, you can write it as y equals that number. So for another just quicker example without the equation, now that we know that, if I were to do one down here, where it hits the y-axis at negative 3, that equation would then be y equals negative 3. And that's how we're writing our equations for horizontal lines.